Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Office Hours with the Professor. As always, I'm your host, William the Professor Collis, and I'm very excited for this week's news story because it is one that is close to home. We're going to talk about Boston hosting next February, that's February 2023's Call of Duty Major. Couple details, as always. Let's get these out of the way. First of all, this is the first time the Call of Duty League has ever come to Boston. It's taking place February 2nd through 5th at the MGM Music Hall at Fenway. It has both a challengers and a major component. And actually, if you're on pre-sale lists, I think tickets are on sale right now. And crucially, this event is hosted by the Boston Breach, which, in the interest of full disclosure, and I don't often talk about this on the podcast because I try to keep things academic, but I am an owner of the Boston Breach, as I'm an owner of, and co-founder actually, of all the OXG brands and teams. But that's not why I wanted to cover the story. I wanted to cover the story for two reasons. The first is it's another opportunity to drill into the health and success of Call of Duty. I don't think people realize just how massive and how important Call of Duty is to esports. This most recent COD is the fastest selling Call of Duty ever. It had the biggest launch ever, and it is likely on pace to be the biggest Call of Duty ever. Okay? And that is insane given the massive annualized juggernaut that is Call of Duty historically. And I think sometimes Call of Duty gets a little bit of short thrift as an esports because it's sort of viewed as the console esport, right? But the reality is, just based on these numbers alone, Call of Duty is probably the most important esports today. You know, it arguably surpasses League of Legends. And I think the Boston Breach, which is the newest expansion team hosting this Call of Duty major in Boston, you know, speaks to real commitment to the health and strength of the league. If the newest team to buy in is also super excited to double down and host a big local major. So, first one, maybe less interesting one, but out of the way, Call of Duty is great. Okay, second reason, the big reason I wanted to talk about this, regionalization in esports. I think this major highlights a really key element of Activision Blizzard's business model for Call of Duty that a lot of people aren't really aware of, and I think is just really, really good business. So the way this works is in the CDL, majors are open to bidding to the teams. It's literally like, say, the World Cup with host nations. This is a very clever way of aligning incentives and getting benefits for a couple of reasons. First of all, from the publisher side, it's a way of ensuring really high executional quality, right? You're not just kind of farming this out to a third-party vendor. You're giving this to a group of highly motivated bidders, and you are giving them to the best of the highly motivated bidders. So from a publisher side, you get high-quality events. From a team side, you get two things: profit and revenue, because believe it or not, hosting these majors is actually a very profitable exercise. But you also gain a free tool to promote and develop a local fan base. And that is really important in a regionalized team model like Call of Duty League utilizes. This is where I want to pause and say I am just a really, really big believer in regionalized team models, particularly at this state of growth we are in esports. There are just tons of synergies you get with regionalized models, like, for example, the ability to host a home tournament like we're discussing, that just don't exist in sort of an amorphous global ecosystem. You know, I'll give you another example. I was just at the Esports Summit in Atlanta, actually with fellow Business of Esports legend Jimmy Barata, and we saw what Ghost Gaming was doing with Skillshot, Atlanta DreamHack, and the other Atlanta incubated businesses. And that also just really reinforced for me the power of building a regionalized hub. It allows your businesses to cross-catalyze so effectively. So, you know, the fact that baked into the CDL League is this assumption of regionalization, I think is a really strong advantage for the league long term. It is not because regionalization is required to be a successful team. I think you can be a successful team without regionalization. It is that regionalization is required to be an optimized, successful team. Because the reality is having a home just comes with so many freebies: a free market, free fans, free locational synergies. There's a reason we build industrial clusters for all sorts of industries, including sports. They should exist for esports too. So that's why I wanted to cover this story this week, because I think it's an interesting and maybe oft underappreciated aspect of the CDL business model, and it gives me an opportunity to say how important I think regionalization is for this next phase of growth in esports. So I give the story an A+, obviously, and I hope you'll join me for another episode of Office Hours with the Professor next week.